So we have our last presenter. This is Ashley Jones. I am really excited to hear about this because this is a big this topic doesn't get talked a lot about, and it's so important. And I have a lot of moms that come to me and talk about like, God, this is not like it used to be. So we're going to have Miss Ashley Jones come on here and talk to us about sex after childbirth, sex and intimacy after childbirth.
So hi, everyone. I'm super happy to be on here and to share this subject with you. And first of all, thank you, Michelle, and everybody who's spoken before. Even though my kids are now 13 and 18, I've gotten so much from this discussion and really enjoyed it. So thank you, everyone. So I'm really happy and excited to drop into the subjects around intimacy and sex after childbirth as mothers, because this is such a such a topic that usually gets left off the forum for discussion because there are so many other topics like we've just gone through. And it's such an important component of our lives that needs to be addressed and thought out, and everything changes. All of you women who are mothers or going to be mothers here, everything shifts in every dynamic of our lives as we birth our babies, as we take on this huge responsibility of growing and then nurturing another human being on this planet. It's just a magnificent thing that we do. And in doing that, a lot can really shift in our intimacy and in our sexual lives. So I want to really drop into this and give you some different scenarios that happen, and to also really talk about different things that you can do. So what I do in my line of work is I'm a love and intimacy embodiment coach, and a breathwork facilitator. And so this is the realm that I really work in, sex, love, and relationship. And I was drawn into this from my own experience and my own struggles in these areas. So I have a firsthand, understanding of this as well. So what are some of the challenges that we as mothers come against in our intimacy and in our sexual lives as we become mothers? And first and foremost, there's mental and emotional aspects that can be really challenging. Again, when we take on this huge responsibility of this another human being, almost all of our attention and focus and time and energy goes into this human being, or human beings if you have more than one child. And that's where our focus goes. And so often everything's being output, and we're just trying to maintain our lives and take care of our kids and our homes. And that intimacy and sexuality often drop to the very bottom of our priority list. It's just often what happens. And when it does, it can create some really detrimental ripples in our relationship and in our own selves, our own way that we relate to ourselves. And it's understandable. Mothers are often super tired. We're exhausted. We often don't get the amount of sleep and rest that we need. We often don't even sometimes get the right nourishment, which is so beautiful that there's been presenters on nourishment here as well. And so we can often feel quite depleted. And so when we are depleted, it's hard to come into a space of sexuality because it takes energy and effort as well. So it's understandable that the mental, emotional aspect of our changing sex lives can be really challenging, a difficult component of it. Another thing that happens, which is kind of interesting around being a new mother, is that the intimacy that we receive from the nurturing that we get from our babies is absolutely delicious. It's divine. The bond that we get, how they nestle into us, if we're nursing them, that component of the connection, the bonding, the intimacy that we develop with our babies is so delicious that it often can override our intimacy with our partner. Esther Perel speaks to this, and it was really fascinating when I first heard her speak to it, and I had to sit with that for a moment and think, wow, was this part of my experience? And there was definitely some truth to that even for myself. So I invite you to think about that. And it's such a sweet time that we get with our babies, and it releases so much oxytocin in our systems. And sometimes, that with our partners isn't as important when we're getting our cup fulfilled so much with the bonding with our babies. So that's another little roadblock that can happen in our lives. And, then there's the physical aspect of what happens to our bodies as we grow these babies and we birth them. Our bodies stretch and expand. We often gain weight. We get stretch marks. Our breasts get bigger and smaller and so forth. And all of these components of what happens with our physical body can also kind of create a toll on how we see ourselves as sexual beings. It can leave us feeling not very sexy. And when we have that feeling, when we have those insecurities or that discomfort with our physical appearance, that too can create a withdrawing of our energy from intimacy and sexuality in our lives. And that's a tricky one. That's for us we have this projection, we have this expectation in our culture of being all these things. There's so many components of being a mother, of being fit and healthy and looking good and having your house together, and all these things that are often not the reality of what is. And so when we're holding our bodies and we're not feeling vibrant and beautiful and sexy, it impacts our ability to be intimate and sexual with our partners as well. So that's just another component. And then there's the physical aspect of actual childbirth. And sometimes the act of childbirth can leave sex feeling painful after childbirth for some time. And I just want to say, before I go into this any deeper, that we are all different. Every woman is different. Every woman has a different experience with their own intimacy and sexuality in their lives. And some women, give birth quite easily and return into their intimate and sexual lives with more ease than others. But that's not always and not usually the case. There's often a kind of a remapping that has to happen. And there can be a lot of emotional hangups with that come along, as well as physical. I want to share my own experience a little bit. When I gave birth to my first child, she was quite big. She was 9 pounds, 10 ounces, and I tore. And I had stitches, and afterwards it made penetrative sex really painful for quite a while. So that's just something that I want to be vulnerable and share, because it actually led me into beginning to understand what happens in our sexuality and how to kind of address that. And I felt very alone in that. I actually went to my doctor when I was probably 10 months, when she was 10 months old, and I told him that I was really struggling with this. And I think he basically said, "Oh, it should get better. Just give it some time." Really didn't give me much guidance around it at all. And I felt very alone, and I felt quite broken, honestly. And it was a really challenging thing. So whether you were like incredibly sexual before you had children or not, everybody has their own experience with it. And often what I find is that women are trying to get back to what they want to feel, what they used to feel. And what I want to really offer here is that you aren't who you were, you are who you are now. And so developing your own a new relationship with intimacy and sexuality in your life as a mother is a totally new process. I've seen in my practice that some women have a really hard time connecting themselves or seeing themselves as a mother and a sexual being. Sometimes we take on that role so strong as a mother, and that means that you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z and not anything else, or those other pieces that aren't necessarily seen as a mother, kind of that puritanical vision of motherhood. And I just, it's such a hard thing when women really feel this, and even if they weren't brought up in that way, to really merge themselves, that they are mothers and they are sexual beings, and that's a very vital, important part of their lives. So being able to merge both yourself as being a mother and a vibrant sexual being is a dance sometimes that we do as mothers and as women. So I want to encourage you to explore that if that is coming up for you. So if any of these aspects that I've spoken to are relatable for you, I just want you to know that you're not alone. This is a completely common, all these pieces that I mentioned are a very, very common things that come up. Maybe some of them spoke to you, maybe some of them didn't. But just knowing that this is an ever-changing landscape. And just like we have seasons in our environment, we also have seasons within our sexuality. We have winters where we're wanting to quiet, we're wanting to break. And after you give birth is a winter. It's a time that your body needs to rest and restore for 6 weeks or more. You know, that is a winter. I remember reading about, I forget what religious group it was, but where they actually don't have sex the entire time they're breastfeeding. It's their time to be with their child, and that's their time with them. And then after they're done nursing, then they return to their sexual intimate life with their husbands. Now, I know that that's kind of extreme, but I thought that honestly at the time that was for me, even though I was a quite sexual being before, I would have been relieved by that. And so everybody has a different kind of temperature with their sexuality and entering back into that in their lives. And what I really want to offer you is that you get to have that. You get to really take note of what you're experiencing and take your time with it. And this is something that unfortunately in our culture we're not really taught about. There's so little education about sexuality. It's so taboo, and yet it's such an important component of our lives. So I really want to kind of bring this to light. As I did my research and my studies, I started learning and understanding the female body, the female anatomy, and I was just in kind of shock that we're given so little information about this in sexual education. They're not even allowed to communicate or discuss or teach female pleasure at all in sexual education. So we have kind of the society that I feel has a very unhealthy relationship with sexuality. We're so sexually based, everything's sexy, but yet we don't have a very healthy relationship with our own sexual energy, which is connected to our life force, our vital energy. And so in getting to learn about this and understand my own body and then to work with women around this, I realized what a disservice it is to women to not educate us on our own bodies. And not just about our anatomy, but about the energy, about how we are as human beings, how much attention and intimacy and connection that we often desire to enter into our sexual space. So learning about that has been just insanely transformed my own personal life and getting to work with women around that to transform them. So just so you know, if you are experiencing any of these things, one, you're not alone, it's very common, and two, there can be a molding, a shifting, and a change. Because what happens a lot of the times when women are experiencing these things, as they start to shut down their sexual energy, they start to withdraw and contract away from it. And this has just detrimental impacts. Or they move into a space of what I call obligation sex, of wanting to please their partner. Usually they, love them, you care about them, you want to take care of their needs, and it's more of a focus on their needs. And you kind of forget about your own needs. What are you needing? What are you experiencing? That is so common that I find. And again, it can be very detrimental to get into a habit and a loop of just taking care of your partner's needs and their pleasure without you fully understanding and receiving that for yourself. So in my journey around this, and what I shared with you earlier about having my first child and feeling the pain during sex, was that I started to understand and learn and notice how much connection and intimate, sensual, sweet time I needed to really be able to let my mind and my head drop away and be present, where my head wasn't always thinking about what I needed to do for my child or the house or my work, where I could really, really let go and be present in the moment. And then how much I actually needed to experience and to enjoy and to feel the pleasure and the energy build in my body before there was ever penetration. And most women, we're slow cookers. We need that time and that space, and we don't often give that to ourselves because we're just in this culture of instantaneous and these expectations of us being these very highly sexual, ready to go at any time. And after you have a child, it definitely, you can't fake that. You can't, you just get to a space where you have to be authentic with yourself and really pay attention and take note of that and make shifts and changes in the dynamic that you have with your partner. Which again can be quite tricky to even talk about this with our partners, because we don't want to hurt their feelings, and we want to let them know that we care about them and we love them, and we don't want them to, egos can be kind of thin around asking for what you want or what doesn't feel good or so forth. To open up those communication doorways can be very challenging. And yet when you don't, and you keep letting the same patterns happen, you're actually training them to do the things that don't feel good to you. And that in turn, like, you contract in that energy because it doesn't feel good. And so you will eventually shut down your energy more and more. I have a theory that that breast cancer and ovarian cancer and that is so rampant because we have such a repressed relationship with women, with our sexual energy, and we don't understand it. And because we have all these external things that affect our ability to be fully empowered and engaged in our sexuality, that it creates energy blockages and disease. Now, that's my theory. I'm not a doctor, but what I see and what I know and what I felt in my own experience is that as I've really understood this and I've allowed my body and my mind and my heart to interact in a different way, that there's so much more life and happiness and health and vitality and energy available to me. And the bonds that you can have with your partner are just grow. And even more importantly, if we're functioning as mothers from a place of feeling repressed in our intimate and sexual lives, we're modeling that to our children. And if we're modeling that to our children, they're going to come into their sexual lives not understanding and not knowing what to do with their sexual energy, not knowing how to be healthy with it. So I think this is a really vital part of our experience as human beings, as mothers, to take note, to take time to understand ourselves, to learn and to create healing where there needs to be healing, to be able to really embody ourselves fully, so that we can in turn create healthier, happier lives for ourselves, for our partnerships, and for our children, for modeling that. It's really an important piece. I want to advocate for your pleasure and your passion and your health. And I want you to be able to advocate for the pleasure, health, and passion of your children. So that's really an integral thing that I am advocating for in the work that I do. Super important, because my kids are 18 and 13. So as my daughter started to come into her sexual life, I was like, ooh, what am I modeling for her? Where do I need to look at myself? And usually we're very awkward about communicating with our children about sexuality because we're awkward with it in ourselves about it. So as we get more comfortable, more connected to that, and then we're able to communicate that and model that for our children. So I think it's an incredibly important piece, and I'm really glad to speak to it today. So my invitation to you is to really think about and maybe even do a little bit of a life review of where you're currently at in your intimate and sexual life. And if you are, obviously, if you're super pregnant, or you're, in the realm right after pregnancy where you're in your winter, that then you are great. Be there and just recognize that and own that. But I also invite you to look at what is working and what's not working, and what are you feeling and what are you experiencing right now in your intimate and your sexual life. And what do you want to be experiencing in your life? How do you want that interaction to be in your life? What do you want that to look like? And what do you want to be experiencing? And what do you want to be modeling for your children? So I think that this is an invitation to maybe journal about this, to look at these aspects and feel into it on a deeper level, and be tender with yourselves, and be kind and be nurturing with yourselves. Whatever you're experiencing, there's a reason why, and it's understandable, and you're not alone. And if there is a lot of challenges, if there's a lot of roadblocks or resistance or contraction going on in your life, I just really want to encourage you to address that, so that you can be in a higher vibration of health and happiness in your life. It's absolutely essential, and I believe that it is your birthright to experience pleasure, and we were built to experience pleasure. So I think it's a very vital part of it. And actually, what I hear from women a lot is, I just don't have the energy. I'm just so tired. I don't have the time. And how do we make space with these kids now, or kid? And I get all of that. I totally understand. It shifts completely. But what I also understand is that the more pleasure that you're experiencing, the more happiness that you're feeling, you're actually going to gain energy by reactivating that part of your life in a healthy way. And you're going to find the time and the space for you to experience that joy and that pleasure and that connection. So that I know to be true, because that has been my experience. And with this invitation for you to look at deeper in your life, I am going to be doing a follow-up class to this. It's going to be just a free virtual class that I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper and give more tools, where we'll have more space to give more tools about communicating with your partner, about understanding and addressing what you are experiencing and what you're needing, and to give you a little bit of a re-education about your body and what is possible. And what I know is that the depths of pleasure that are available to women is expansive. And again, we're just not really taught to know that or to understand it. So if you feel like you're broken, if you feel like something's wrong, that you don't experience the amount of pleasure that you think you should be, or you think other people are, and you're a mother and you have all these other aspects on top of you, don't give up. That's my message. Please don't give up on yourself. Know that there's so much information out there now. And if any of this resonates with you and you want to follow this up, I invite you to a free virtual class that I'm doing on next Friday. That's the 17th at 2 p.m. Hawaiian time and 5 p.m. Pacific time, if anybody's on the mainland. And that it's free. It's just an hour. And you can email me. I think Michelle might have my email address, but it's ashkawai@gmail.com. Or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Up Level Love. That was just all one word, Up Level Love. Yeah, please reach out to me if this resonates with you. And then I also work one-on-one with people if there's something up for you. I definitely address abuse and trauma as well. If there's any sexual abuse and trauma, that will definitely come up, and probably has come up in your life. But if it's something that you feel like you've dealt with, and then you give birth, and then there's all these other layers, and it usually kind of unearths whatever issues are there. Childbirth will unearth them for you to look at and address. So, thank you for having me and for allowing me to share this. And I would love to just open it up to any questions that anybody has here.
Ashley, that was so incredible. I don't know if you could see the chat bars, but there's a lot of people talking.
Okay.
Making wonderful comments about you and about this. So I think Liz had a question.
Okay.
That one. Where do you suggest we start? I feel like I've just started to come into my sexuality or even desired deeper intimacy within the last 3 years. I'm 27.
Well, good, Liz. Where do you start? Okay, there's a lot of resources online now. One of my favorite teachers is Layla Barton, and laylamartin.com. She's all over YouTube as well. If you look her up, there are going to be other people as well that you can look at. She's got incredible tutorials. Again, I'm a resource, so reach out to me. I support that theory. Yes, taking notes. Okay, this is so interesting. So good, Ashley. Okay, is there any other? Wish my mom had this support. I know. So this is what I'm noticing. It's like, for us to want our children to have a healthy relationship with sexuality, we have to have a healthy relationship with our own sexuality. That's just how it goes. And I want to be an advocate for my children's health and pleasure in all forms of what that means for them. And intimacy is such an important component of that. I hear women, I work with couples actually quite a lot. And I hear mostly women, not always. Sometimes it's a man wanting deeper intimacy and just not knowing how to get it. What I've noticed is that we kind of resonate on this, generally speaking. Our sexual interactions are, again, they're kind of male focused, and they're kind of this level of interaction where there's usually, there's sexual interaction, there's a climax with the man, maybe there's orgasm, and then the guy falls asleep and the woman is left there kind of feeling like, well, I'm not really, and then there can be a lot of kind of frustration and resentment left in that dynamic. But as we both learn to kind of understand the availability of our energy and our sexual interaction, we can deepen that bond. We can both expand into a space and both feel incredible amounts of energy and connection from that. But that takes some knowingness. So, I used to feel, well, this is it, and sometimes it feels pretty good, and sometimes it feels like nah, and sometimes I think it, and I just really didn't understand until I started to study and look into it further and understand my own being and body and energy. And again, I just think that I'm so glad that there's people out here doing this work now and sharing this, because it's not shared in our culture very much. It's not most of women don't even know their true names of their anatomy. Of their sexual anatomy. So it's something that has a long lineage of kind of confusion and, patriarchal kind of repression. So it's a very important subject. And as we become mothers, again, it's just something that we can't suppress anymore. It's something that, or we go into suppression or, repression with it, and then it causes a ripple effect of discomfort in every area of your life. So I highly recommend to do that review, to just see what is there, what is up for you, what are you experiencing, what are you wanting to experience. And again, if you're in that space of, about to give birth, or in that 6+ weeks of, what do you want your sex life to look like as a mother? And can you know and accept that you are a beautiful, amazing mother, and you are a sexual being. No matter what stretch marks you have or extra weight on you, that you are a magnificent, beautiful sexual being at any stage of your life. Whether you're older or younger, it doesn't matter. And I believe that sexual energy is life force energy. It's one and the same. So when you disconnect from your sexual energy, you're also disconnecting from a part of your life force energy, and that can be very depleting as well. So, any other questions for me? The mental load, yeah. Yes, getting over the Dana Palmer, okay, yeah, a big thing for me is the mental load of all the other things on my list. Getting over the hurdle is a big part of the battle for me. I hear you, girlfriend. Yes, I know. When we're carrying so much of that load. And I also will say to Dana that being able to disconnect from the mental load, even in moments of breathing and just releasing and letting go, is really important and healthy for you, whether it's in a sexual space or not, to be able to not go through your day just on edge and survival. Know that those things will be there when you get back to it. If you take 5 minutes to sit down and breathe, if you take a half an hour to go have an intimate moment or an hour or whatever, those things will be there. They don't need to be thought about and in your presence and in your energy field 24/7. I totally understand. I've been there. It is overwhelming, and you're doing a disservice to yourself to hold on to it all the time. And so whatever tool, I can give you tools around that for sure, and I will be deepening into that in the virtual workshop. But to be able to disconnect or just to let go and release and totally be in the present moment, and to actually, one of the components that I think is really important is to how much joy, how much fun can you bring into the housework, the daily humdrum stuff that you're doing. What can you do to excite and have fun and joy in your life instead of just going through your to-do list? That's one way to enjoy that more and to be able to release it and let it go and know that if the dishes don't get done in this moment, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. And if the house isn't totally clean, and there's so much pressure on us as mothers to look a certain way and to, have our homes together and to be fit and to look a certain, it's all of that. But honestly, it's just a projection and it's just an illusion. So what's most important is for you to be connected to what you're experiencing and what you want to experience, and to really step up into empower yourself to create that. And it's really up to you to create that. It's not up to anybody else or anybody else's projection. So the more that you can kind of release and let go of that and connect into what's really important in your life and take action in that way, is when you're going to feel a lot more connected and happier and vibrant and even sexy. So, all right, any other questions? Yeah, so true. What a better time than now to start this. We got time. Yes, and again, communicating what you're experiencing to your husband. Lots of times we play this like guessing game. They're supposed to know what I want, and they're vice versa. Again, that is the delicate dance, to be able to communicate those pieces to our partners so that we can create that together.
Oh, Ashley, that was just incredible. Thank you so much. So much to think about. It's so needed, so needed. So go ahead. When is your workshop again? Tell us about your workshop.
Yeah, it's Friday, the 17th at 2 p.m.
Okay.
And it's going to be 1 hour where I'm going to dive in a bit deeper about these subjects. And I just need your email so that I can email you the link to join.
Okay.
So you need to email me, whoever, at ashkawai@gmail.com, or you can message me on Facebook or Instagram at Up Level Love.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to be there. So Ashley, you also had a little prize, our little last prize of the day that you were donating. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, it can be one of two things. It can either be a breathwork session. I do biodynamic breathwork and trauma release system, which is great, especially at this time. So if you're curious about breathwork and you want to explore that, we can do that. Or if you would prefer to do a coaching session around love and intimacy or the things that are coming up in your life, I'm open to being flexible one way or another with you. So it would be one of those offerings that I'm gifting.